Okay. Can you hear me? Am I okay? Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name's Amy Watson. I'm here today to be, well, I guess I'm not being baptized right now, but at 11:10 I'll be baptized, to share my story and testimony. After spending some serious time thinking about how God has been a part of my life, I had to consider some of the main events that occurred and some of the main people who influenced me. If I had not done some of the things or knew some of the people throughout my life, I truly believe that I would not be here today doing what I'm about to do. I hope that some of you will be able to connect with my story and that it may even help you to deal with and accept some of the regrets that you have, move forward, and take the next step by asking God to forgive you, releasing your guilt and being free to live your new life while accepting your past. I was born in Welland 27 years ago. I'm the youngest of 4 children. I am blessed to have 2 parents who have and always will adore me, love me, and support me no matter what. I grew up feeling safe and secure and never had to worry about my needs or even my wants being met. My parents both talked to me about God here and there, and we attended church occasionally for a few years when I was young. Although I had an idea of who God was, he was not on my mind, and I did not have a relationship with him. My sister, Michaela Ullman, her husband, John, and their 2 children, Amanda and Michael, regularly attended church and were a part of their small church community. They went to a small church in Welland, but have now been attending Bethany for approximately 10 years. As I grew older, I became more curious about God. I knew there was something about my sister's family that I didn't understand, was missing, and that I was curious about. Looking back, I'm not sure exactly when or how it started, but I began going to church with them and joined the youth group at their church. This helped me to learn more about God and connect with other kids my age who went to church and who were from Christian families. It was about this time that I began struggling with a number of common issues that most young girls are faced with. My friends at school and I began caring a lot about boys, makeup, the clothes we were wearing, and our changing bodies. Then we began focusing on what was cool and who, in our opinion, was cool. I worried about what my friends thought about me, and I started distancing myself from God because of what other people might think. My desire to fit in won, as it continued to do for many years. It was during this time that it would have been the most beneficial for me to grow closer to God and to those who believed and who could have helped me with some of my inner struggles about physical appearance, intimacy with boys, and respecting myself and others. I feel I could have saved myself from a mountain of troubles, regrets, and disappointments if I had just tried harder to get to know God. I went through high school and university making a number of choices based purely on my wants at the time. I'm reading this book now called Made to Crave for Young Women by Lisa Turkhurst and Shanti Feldhen. The book is intended for girls slightly younger than me, but I have found that it has been quite relevant to me as I try to understand some of the choices that I made. The book talks about the inner desire we have to want more, that we were made to feel this way by God, but that the feeling is intended to want more of him, to desire him. Yet we as humans try to fill this need in other ways, with our own wants and desires. She explains the physical, emotional, and material wants we have and how we focus on them. This was the absolute definition of me throughout high school and university. I wanted more of everything. Physically, I cared too much about what I looked like, how much I weighed, what type of clothes I had on, and how my hair and makeup looked. Emotionally, I turned to boys to make me feel good about myself, to make me feel wanted, special, and beautiful. I chose friends that made me feel a certain way about myself. Material desires were filled by focusing on the type of brand name clothing I was wearing, how many purses, shoes, dresses, jackets, and outfits I had, and the need to have all the latest and greatest of everything. If I had known that God could have satisfied all my needs and done all these things for me in a healthy way, things could have been different. But I chose to satisfy my wants with worldly things rather than with him. I gave in to my desires and temptations. I pushed boundaries, fell into peer pressured others, thought of only myself, and I cared too much about what my friends thought. The funny thing about filling these physical, emotional, and material desires on your own is that once you look a certain way, feel a certain way, have that certain thing, you may be satisfied momentarily, but then you just move on to the next thing that you hope will make you happy or satisfied, never actually having these feelings last for long. This is where I needed God, and I didn't even know it. In my last year of university, I began dating an old boyfriend from elementary school and high school. We rushed into things far too quickly, let emotions take over, and made lifelong decisions in a heartbeat. I became pregnant, and although I believed everything was perfect at the time, things quickly began to change. I began finding out things about him, his personality, his beliefs, and his values. If we had only been dating, there would have been so many warning signs. However, because we had rushed into things before really knowing everything about one another, I ignored a number of little things which eventually turned into a number of big issues. We began disagreeing about everything and anything. I didn't like my life, I wasn't happy, and I worried what the effect would be on my son. I continued on with the relationship until finally I told him I wasn't happy and thought we should try and get some help, at which point he decided to leave only weeks later. I know if I had accepted God into my life, I would have known that I had someone with me throughout the most difficult time in my life. I was 23 when I had Riley and 24 when I became a single mom. I was just figuring out how to be an adult, a woman, and here I was trying not only to be a mom, but doing it all on my own. It was always overwhelming, it was always exhausting, it was always lonely, and it was always heartbreaking. I was fortunate enough to have a number of close family and friends, but it was never enough. Going back to what I mentioned earlier, my needs were unable to be met by my means. No matter what I did, I couldn't deal with so many things. When I had my son Riley, my life greatly shifted. I was not the most important thing, now he was. I knew I had to change my way of thinking. My focus was not on me and what I wanted, now it was on him and what he needed. My perspective on life, on family, on friends changed drastically. I had discussed attending church with Riley's dad, but it was always a maybe one day conversation. I knew I wanted my son to grow up knowing God. I have seen how my niece and nephew have developed a relationship with God and how it has helped them through the years and how it has shaped who they are today. When it became just me and Riley, I had thought about church, but I was worried that I wouldn't fit in, that my past was too big of a deal, that my choices were embarrassing, that I wasn't good enough. I had to take the chance. I knew I couldn't do it on my own anymore. I was sick of trying. It was exactly 1 year ago this weekend that I went to my first official service at Bethany. As I mentioned earlier, my sister and her family have been coming to Bethany for a number of years. It's interesting because I never thought of going anywhere other than Bethany. I had a feeling that it just had to be here. That first day was so crazy to me. Right away, a place where I felt safe, comfortable, and welcomed. Even though I only knew my sister and her family, I knew it was where I belonged, where I needed to be. I fell in love with church that first day. I knew that I wasn't going anywhere. I still had a number of things I was dealing with, and I had not instantly decided to give my life, give everything over to God, but I knew that this was the start of something great. Over the last year, I've come to terms with a lot of issues I had about my past, about the poor choices I made and the consequences that came along with them. I'm so thankful for my son Riley. Who knows where I would be if I had not been blessed with him. He started the change in my life, the reason why I turned to God. I am so grateful that my son brought me to him. I have loved learning about God and getting closer to him. Some of my fondest moments over the past year have been just talking about him with other people. I've had so many incredible moments in church, at home, and out with family or friends where I can just feel how he's speaking to me and connecting with me. I honestly couldn't tell you how many times I've had something on my mind, and then I come to church to hear Pastor Larry address the very issue I've been dealing with. Or I go to Bethel and hear George discuss an answer to a question I was just asking. Only 3 weeks ago, I was trying to decide if now was the time to be baptized. I came to church to hear exactly what I needed to hear. I knew that it was now, that it needed to be now, that God was telling me it was now. Of course, even though I have chosen to trust God and I've chosen to listen for him, it doesn't mean that I don't have bad days and times of struggle. It just means that those days are so much easier for me to deal with. I know that he is there with me, just as he always was, only now I'm able to appreciate it. I know that there was a reason for it all. I know that I was being loved by him even when I didn't deserve to be, and that I was never really alone, and now I know that I'll never really be alone again. I guess it all comes back to faith, faith that there is a bigger plan, and faith that when he wants to be heard, he will without a doubt be heard. I've chosen to be baptized today because I want to take the next step, coming closer to God. I've accepted him into my life and have finally decided to give him control over all parts of my life, to trust him and have faith in him. I'm going to close now with a few verses from Psalm 18 in the Message. He stood me up on a wide open field. I stood there saved, surprised to be loved. God made my life complete when I placed all the pieces before him. When I got my act together, he gave me a fresh start. Now I'm alert to God's ways. I don't take God for granted. Every day I review the ways he works. I try not to miss a trick. I feel put back together, and I'm watching my step. God rewrote the text of my life when I opened the book of my heart to his eyes.